All right, what's going on, everyone? So today we're going to talk about Russian support inside of the United States. Bottom line up front, it's close to zero. Like in most cases, there's very little at all. And we're going to prove that by looking at a handful of different polls, asking that question in a variety of ways, and then showing some comparisons of things that have a higher favorability rating inside of the United States than Russia and or Vladimir Putin. Now, the reason I wanted to get into this is I was talking with a friend of mine from Ukraine last week around the time that the aid package was passed through the House of Representatives, through the Senate, and signed by President Biden. And he said, yeah, this is great. It's good. It's positive. It's good news for Ukraine. But why are there so many Russian supporters in the United States? And we talked about it for a while, but bottom line is there's not. There are a couple different categories here worth kind of breaking these out right away. This video is talking about people inside of the United States, American citizens that support Russia, that view Russia in a positive light and or support what they are currently doing in Ukraine. That is who we're talking about. That Russian support, it just doesn't really exist in the United States. There's other aspects here, right? We've got the loud voices on the internet that make it seem like they represent a majority view in this way or the other, and they just don't, according to a lot of polling. There's also a group that just does not support continuing sending military aid to Ukraine for any number of reasons. They might think that we need to be spending more time and energy on issues at home, or maybe the southern border, or maybe that China is a bigger priority, whatever it is. There was a recent poll, Economist YouGov, on 23rd April, just last week, 29% of Americans said that they favored a decrease in military aid to Ukraine. I do not view those 29% as being pro-Russia. There might be a couple percent in there, as we'll see through later polls, that would fit that category. But I don't think it's fair to say that just because somebody says, I don't think we should be providing more aid to Ukraine, that does not automatically make them pro-Russia, in my point of view. And that's kind of the direction that I'm going to take this video. So starting with a Gallup poll on 13 March 2023, the overall favorability of Russia sank to 9%. 9% favorability, or it was, actually. That was in 2023. It has since sunk to 8% as of February 2024. For reference there, other countries' favorability, Afghanistan has a 13% favorability, China, 20%. So 1 in 5 Americans has a favorable view of China. 1 in 10 has a favorable view of Russia. Cuba, 39% favorability. Love that. Iran, 13%. North Korea, 9%. Russia is worse off now in the eyes of Americans, has a lower favorability rating by Americans than North Korea. Syria is at 14% and Yemen's at 21%. All right, so the reason I want to bring these comparisons up is not that they're all perfect and dialed in exactly, but when was the last time you heard somebody talking about how wonderful North Korea is? Or how, hey, you know what, I think Iran's got all the right answers. Or that Kim Jong-un is really on the right track. If it wasn't for the United States, he sure would be, making good things happen. Probably not very much, right? But there's more people that support those countries and think those countries are doing the right thing than do Russia. So just keep that in mind when you see some of the discourse online right now. More people have a favorable view of North Korea than they do Russia. So, reality check, maybe, especially if you spend much time on Twitter. Then we've got a Pew Research poll from 20 to 26 March 2024 that showed a 7% favorability rating for Russia, with only 3% of respondents saying that Russia is a partner of the United States, which is tough to see in a sense because we live together in this world and we have to work together in some way, shape, or form. So for 3% to view Russia as a partner, that's the state of affairs right now. That's how toxic this relationship has been between the United States and Russia. So we've got 7% favorability of Russia. A comparison here is, I think it was a 2021 study, said that 10% of Americans believe the earth is flat. And 12% think that the moon landings were faked. So just think about this again. When was the last time you were walking around town, hanging out with your friends, maybe going to a bar, and you had somebody sit down and have a genuine conversation about why the earth is flat? How many flat earthers do you know that you've run into that have that conversation, that genuinely believe that? Supposedly that's 1 in 10. There are more flat earthers walking around in the United States than there are people who support Russia. So again, jump online, take a look at some of these comment sections and how there's so much praise for Putin and Russia and support for what they're doing. And then just recognize that poll after poll after poll, that just doesn't line up with what Americans are saying. Now, there's some additional caveats we're going to get into here in a second. One of them, for what it's worth, is there's no good poll out there that says, do you support what Russia, as an American, do you support Russia kind of thing. They're not that right on the nose. There's a lot of different ways they ask it. Who do you sympathize more with? Favorability, things like that. Do you support Ukraine aid or no? Who do you think is going to win the war? So you kind of got to read between the lines a little bit. But there's not this overt, do you support Russia type poll, at least not that I could find, right? So we're trying to look at a lot of different ones here. And for what it's worth, I wasn't just picking out the ones that made Russia look bad. I was picking out anything that talked about that sort of favorability or a viewpoint of Russia. And it's not my fault that they're all bad. It's just what they are. I'm just trying to show them. So we've got an Economist YouGov poll from 14 to 16 April 2024. They said, do you consider Russia to be an ally or an enemy of the United States? 2% said ally. 4% said friendly. So at most, and if you notice, these keep getting worse and worse and worse for Russia. 6% of Americans in that poll view Russia in any sort of positive light. That is, it's tiny, right? Again, we've talked about more people viewing North Korea in a positive light, more flat earthers than view Russia in a positive light. It is a tiny, tiny number. Then we've got a Economist YouGov poll, this one from 16 to 19 March 2024. They said, who do you sympathize more with, Russia or Ukraine? And this one's a little bit more of a nuance because instead of just saying, do you like Russia? Are they good? Favorability. It's tying it directly to Russia and Ukraine. In this case, so, take that for what it's worth. It's a little more dialed in of a question. 3% said that their sympathies lie more with Russia. 3%. The margin of error on that poll is 3.6%. The support for Russia is less than the margin of error on the poll. I don't know. I'm not very smart. Statistician, figure that out. That's not good for Russia, right? That's really low. I think that's really low. 66% in that poll said they sympathize more with Ukraine. 22% said neither, and 9% said not sure. Again, I don't really want to get into the do you like Ukraine or Russia more, because I think that dials in the question more than I'm really looking to do. But it's hard to pass one up where the sympathies for Russia are lower than the margin of error in the poll that's being used. Just, again, the reason I want to bring these up is when you jump online and you think you're running into Russian supporters left and right, they're probably not, or they're not Americans, or you just happen to get lucky and you're talking to that 3% that is apparently really, really loud online. Now, to be fair, these are all American polls. They're asking Americans about their feelings of Russia. We could spend a lot of time talking about international views of Russia, right? There are countries all around the world that have different perceptions of Russia. So I wanted to focus in on how do Americans view Russia, because I do think there's some manipulative, maybe less than honest social media floating around out there, making it seem like there are widespread, that there is some sort of widespread support for Putin and Russia and what they're doing in Ukraine, when there just isn't. Again, there's a lot of pushback on the continuation of aid to Ukraine, which is very different than support for Russia. The support for Russia, it's just not there. But I wanted to talk about just real quickly the international views of Russia. The same Pew Research did like a global poll asking people all around the world their favorabilities of Russia. And when looking through, and they did it for a bunch of different countries. I just pulled out the Russian piece, right? So in that poll, it showed that 57% of Indians view Russia favorably. 42% of Nigerians view Russia favorably, as do 40% of Kenyans, 34% of Mexicans, 32% of Greeks. A little surprising on that last one. But it shouldn't be shocking, right? Different areas of the world have different viewpoints of different countries based off of how they are interacting with their local area. And this Pew Research poll didn't have anything about China, unfortunately. I don't know why. But I have seen in a handful, it's hard to get accurate polling anywhere, hard to get accurate polling in China as well, but I've seen upwards of 70% favorable of Russia in China, right? So again, the focus of this video is U.S. support, American support for Russia, which is just like non-existent. It's close to zero. But when you go out to the rest of the world, it is much, much higher, right? Including places like China where, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen at least a few numbers that suggest it could be 70% or higher. So hopefully that was helpful. Next time you see somebody rattling on online about how many Americans support Putin or how many Americans support Russia, just know that that doesn't really line up with the numbers. Or, of course, I guess you got to keep in the back of your mind that nobody wants to say in a poll that they they support Russia. But that, again, I don't know how you account for that across all of these different organizations, different polls, different times, different questions. It just seems to me like that support might be exaggerated online and not realistic in person. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out our Substack, which is linked in the description below. Substack is like a mix between a newsletter and a website. We publish articles, audio articles, videos there, and they can come direct to your inbox every time they're published. A variety of topics, right? Talking about Mexico, Asia, China, Middle East, terrorism, Ukraine, Russia, and quite a bit more. Technology used in warfare. I think it's pretty interesting stuff. Of course, if you're interested in any of that, check it out in the description below. But thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.